When a professional gets it wrong, the damage doesn't stay on the page, it moves, through agencies, through courtrooms, through families, and sometimes through an entire neighborhood. Professional malpractice is simple at its core. A licensed expert owes a duty. That expert must deliver work that meets the standards of their profession. If they don't, and real harm follows, the law recognizes that breach as malpractice. But in land use disputes, malpractice rarely looks dramatic. It often starts as a missing monument, a wrong boundary line, a map that isn't verified on the ground, a small error that becomes the foundation other people start building on. When the foundation is wrong, everything built on top of it leans. In the Deep Cove Lane record, the trigger point is a survey, a professional service, paid for, expected to follow standards, physical verification, monument location, plat of record reliance, and independence from hearsay. But the survey in the record didn't do that. Field evidence was ignored. Missing irons weren't set. Drainage and roadway conditions were never reconciled with the subdivision geometry, and unverified statements were accepted as boundary fact. That single breach placed a false picture into circulation. A picture that made a public drainage basin look like a private yard, a public right-of-way look like an enforceable boundary, and a continuous drainage corridor look like a trespass line. When a survey is wrong, everyone downstream gets pulled off course. The most dangerous errors in land disputes don't spread because they're dramatic. They spread because they look official. That defective survey entered county mapping assumptions. It shaped how public works viewed the basin. It shaped how the right-of-way was described. It shaped how deputies interpreted standing, access, and property limits. And once it reached the courtroom, the map became truth. Not because it was true, but because no one corrected it. Professional malpractice doesn't just cause confusion. It shifts the entire legal landscape in the wrong direction. When a boundary is wrong, the next safeguard is counsel. Defense counsel exists to catch misapplied evidence, expose inaccurate maps, and insist on the correct legal definitions. But in this record, the safeguard failed. Critical evidence was not presented. County disclaimers on GIS accuracy were never raised. Right-of-way geometry was never corrected. Drainage corridor facts never reached the judge. And because the errors were never challenged, a criminal restriction was placed over a civil boundary that never existed. When multiple professionals fail in sequence, the law itself begins to bend, not on purpose, but through momentum. Public Works interpreted the basin incorrectly. The roadway corridor was misread. Drainage shifts went unacknowledged. Law enforcement treated a disputed area as private. Once the bond court relied on the same distorted picture, the outcome was predictable. Restricted movement, loss of property access, constructive eviction, reputational harm, and years of litigation built on a boundary that never matched the ground. This is the cost of professional malpractice, not as a moral failing, but as a structural one. And here is the pivot point in the story. When law is applied to a false factual foundation, the law contradicts itself. The common enemy doctrine relies on how water actually flows. Probable cause standards rely on what property actually is. Right-of-way rules rely on how roads are actually laid out. Drainage laws rely on how basins actually function. If the professional who defined those facts failed, every downstream legal decision rests on sand. What happened on Deep Cove Lane is not an isolated story. Across the country, property owners face the same pattern. A misplaced line, a wrong setback, a misunderstood drainage basin, and a system that reacts before the mistake is corrected. Professional malpractice is not just a private failure, it's a public one. Because once an error enters the system begins to enforce it. When a map is wrong, the truth is buried. But when the truth resurfaces, the law must reset with it. Every piece of land holds a story, some written in law, others hidden beneath the surface. If you found this helpful, tap follow and join Land Unlocked, where we uncover the hidden laws of land use and ownership.